I guess one of the easiest ways to conceptualize where we play in the industry as a 3PL would be being a travel agent for boxes. And if your flight gets canceled and you book your own flight, you're scrambling, you're manic, right? If you have that partner that's helping you get through this, getting you a new flight or getting you a new truck, I think that's that type of solution where it's okay to have somebody help you that's better at it than you are. And it's okay to want that human interaction when things don't go wrong and you're feeling that stress or that pressure or that anxiety.
I'm Nick LaFleur, and you're listening to Age of Agility, the podcast that talks to industry and business leaders to answer the question, what is operational agility and what does it look like in practice? This week, Shannon is joined by Ron Tessendorf, a leader with over 15 years' experience growing logistics operations. Ron is currently president of New Age Logistics, a growing organization based in the Chicago area. This is a great conversation and definitely worth a listen. We normally talk a lot about technology on this show, and this week we also learn about how important relationships are, and specifically in the logistics space, and how critical balancing technology with a touch of humanity can be to drive success in this field. We also learn the difference between in-house and third-party logistics operations, and Ron shares why large enterprises who often manage their logistics in-house will also find value in partnering with a 3PL. Take a listen and enjoy our conversation with Ron Tessendorf.
Welcome to the Age of Agility. This is a show where we talk to people who are facing unique challenges with an agility mindset. We'll learn from industry leaders, business and IT professionals, and even check in on our colleagues from time to time. Stay tuned as we explore the age of agility. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Age of Agility podcast. My name is Shannon Curran, and I am your host. We are here today with a really exciting guest that's going to talk to us all things logistics. We have here Ron Tessendorf, who is the president of New Age Logistics, here with us today. Ron, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Shannon. I appreciate you having me on the show today.
So can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do at New Age Logistics, and maybe a little bit about your background in the logistics space?
Sure, it'd be my pleasure. Currently, I'm the president of New Age Logistics. We're based here in Chicago and Palatine, Illinois. It's actually a pretty interesting story about the company itself. It was founded in 1989. It was a women's business enterprise for almost 30 years. We actually had an acquisition in 2018 by a company called Evans Network. Evans was founded in 1939. Our whole network combined now is a $1.6 billion company. We have 700 locations, 8,000 operators, and we operate in just about every major market in North America. So for us, it's been a pretty interesting ride. I'm relatively new to the Evans and the New Age team. Prior to this, I spent the last 15 years working in transportation and logistics and different management capacities with both sales and operations. Prior to working in transportation and freight, I did spend some time working at companies like Chase, Career Builder, and some other telecom companies like Nextel and Sprint. But for the last, I guess it's like 15 years now, I've been a logistics dork, and it's been an amazing ride, and I can't get enough of it. So.
Awesome. I don't think you're alone. I think a lot of our audience are in your cohort of logistics dorks. So I think you're not. Hopefully they are really excited to hear about all of your experiences today. So just to start on a few questions for you. So what is the difference between third-party logistics compared to organizations that manage their logistics in-house? Can you talk a little bit about the difference there?
Sure. I guess one of the easiest ways to conceptualize where we play in the industry as a 3PL would be like being a travel agent for boxes. So as a 3PL, we don't actually own any of the trucks in most examples. We could, but most typically we're going to use partners. And we don't own any of the cargo or the equipment being transported, but we do partner up with different vendors, truckers, trains, planes, boats for the transportation leg, warehousing companies to store it, and then partnering with shippers and receivers to get the goods from point A to point B. So even though you see a lot of industries where that kind of intermediary or middle person is starting to go away, it's still really thriving in the logistics space. like I guess for a 3PL, where it makes sense really. Um, for the shipper, they kind of jump in and ask us for help on things like regulatory compliances, new rules with the Department of Transportation, different insurance levels. They're asking us for that expertise. For the transportation providers, truck lines, the boats, planes, they're looking at us really as an extension of their sales force and opening up opportunities for them to get the most return on their capital equipment. It's a pretty unique space. It's really fun to play in, and it's definitely a growing industry.
Yeah, so on that note, what is something that you find people typically get wrong or misunderstand about your job or your industry?
I'd say for us, there's a lot of questions about why can't I do it myself? Or why would I hire somebody to do something I could myself with all the technology and tools that are enabled? We do see a lot of larger companies like a Coca-Cola or a Home Depot, big public companies that have their own transportation department, but they're still relying on 3PL companies and other intermediaries to kind of assist them with their transportation. For us, I guess some of the confusion would be what's the need? And for us, it's just being that conduit between people and managing these communications and the technologies and the relationships. But we don't, in most examples, we're not going to be owning any of the trucks or any of the equipment or the drivers. We're really just the connectivity between everyone else. Now, as part of our parent company, we do have a lot of our own equipment, over 8,000 pieces of trucks, but as that third party logistics company, really it's about partnering in with these shippers and becoming an extension of their operations and their supply chain and focusing on the things that we do best so they can focus on running their business.
Yeah, so you can book your own vacation, but you could also use a travel agent, which would make it a lot easier.
Essentially, that's in a sense that's exactly right. And we open up new destinations
Yeah.
in that travel agent capacity. Now we're opening up new lane partners, new vendors. Yeah, and it's a pretty interesting space. It's definitely evolved. There's a lot more use of technology in the last, even in the time that I've been in the industry, it's definitely becoming more big data driven. There's a lot more focus on using technology to expedite the communication and the transfer of documents and data, but it's still very much a people driven kind of an industry.
So a huge part of the work that you do is obviously having to predict demand. Can you talk to us a little bit about sort of how you do your forecasting, how you can kind of predict how much demand there will be for your work, as well as sort of some of the things that you measure success?
Yeah, there's all types of different tools out there and third party vendors. Some of the bigger brand names would be companies like the DAT or FreightWave Sonar or truckstop.com. And they really specialize in trying to aggregate big data and making it usable for the consumer. There's other types of patterns and trends that are going to be, I'll call them rhythmic and non-rhythmic. So a great example of something that we can predict is that in the southeast of the country, during the later part of spring and early part of summer, there's going to be a huge influx of demand to have outbound shipping while people are getting all their produce out. So we know this, it happens every year. Oranges, peaches, everything, stone fruits, they get really popular coming out of like Georgia, Florida, North Carolina. And so we know going into quarter two that getting outbound capacity or lift there or having available equipment to meet up with the demand can be a struggle. You'll see other kind of alternatives too, where you have a Hurricane Harvey or a Hurricane Sandy in the New York area, where you have that impact event. And now it's the opposite, where you're going to have shippers being shut down, but you have this relief aid that needs to come in. We can kind of preemptively forecast that not by months, but by days and know and prepare to have equipment repositioned to do relief efforts and to help support shippers get, essential goods to these DCs and warehouses and fulfillment centers. So we do use a lot of tools there to try and forecast these non-rhythmic events when they do happen. And then you do see other events where we have like shortages on staff to work the shores and the ports in Southern California. There's just a huge backlog of import freight being kind of stuck in the water, waiting to get offloaded and then transported out. So that's an area where we'll see like a perpetual pause on that regular rhythm, and that event can last a couple of months, a couple of quarters in some examples. Mm-hmm. So we try our best to stay in front of it. There's a lot of unknown factors. Some of it is predictable months out, some of it is predictable days out, and sometimes there's just a spike in demand. A great example of that would be something like a new iPhone being released. And we have to get it to stores nationwide for a product release so everybody can get it on the launch date. It actually has a huge impact on the supply chain and transportation. You're going to charter private aircraft to get it from Asia to here in the States, and then you'll see a huge influx of outbound demand where it's imported, whether it's Seattle or Chicago or Los Angeles. And from there, there's a huge explosion of trucks going in every direction trying to get to these fulfillment centers and these DCs. So that way, on launch day, everybody can have the new iPhone or the new Galaxy in hand, and it's very cool. But behind the scenes, lots of people staying up late, burning the midnight oil, driving feverishly to get these things in position. And every time you do have this product launch or something new and exciting and big, that comes at expense of the regular freight that's in that more rhythmic kind of a flow where I'm shipping every day. I manufacture sodas or I manufacture paper towels, and now I have to put up with iPhones coming in, or I have to try and get my trucks, my bookings completed when there's a produce event or a natural disaster. That's some of the chaos that's in transportation that keeps every day a little unique and fresh, kind of like every day is its own little organism.
Yeah.
And we do our best to try and stay in front of it. And again, we're an advocate for both the shippers and the truckers. So we try our best to kind of alleviate all those tensions where we can and keep freight moving and keep truckers trucking.
Yeah, it seems, yeah, talk about unsung heroes. I feel like this is like all of the, the behind the scenes work to get to that customer experience is what this definitely feels like. The more we talk to folks that work in supply chain resiliency or visibility, you can see that there's just so much that has to go right. And specifically this year, which is a lot of the reason why we started this podcast, but now just seems like reality, is a year of disruption, whether it is a boat stuck in the Suez Canal, or it is a global pandemic and you can't get toilet paper and paper towels, right? So that's like natural disaster times, like probably 1,000 million. This is me not working in your field.
It's a 100-year event. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about what you've learned over the last year, about your work and what you're going to take forward from all of this massive disruption.
I would say leading up to COVID, there was just a really large push to try and digitize everything we could. And what we've learned kind of coming out of the 2020 year with all the pressure that COVID put on supply chains nationwide was that ultimately a lot of what we do is still going to be very much relationship driven. The words we use, how we are communicating, the impact we have on shippers, receivers, truckers, consignees, those words matter, that impact matters. So I think what we've come to appreciate is that we're deploying as much technology as we can everywhere that we can, but that this is still really a personal one-to-one relationship in a lot of these transactions, and that there has to be a mutual respect. There has to be a mutual cadence on the collective purpose,
right.
And that these drivers that are out on the road, especially last year, when everyone was being told to shelter, they're being deployed to major metro areas. They're away from their families. It's a hard life. And I think what we learned was that we can't .com our way out of this. It's still until the trucks are going to be robot driven, which is still a ways out, and until the warehouse lifters are robotic as well, until we're like in some iRobot reality. It's still very much throw all the technology you want at it. We still have to treat each other with a lot of civility, grace, patience, and kindness. And we learned that. And I'm really excited to see that like the country as a whole is starting to recognize truckers as a big part of everyone's life every day. Anything that you can tangibly touch, it got there somehow, probably by a trucker. I'm happy to see that they're getting a lot more recognition. And for us, what we've kind of learned to do is, because we're this intermediary in most markets, we really just have to ensure that we're operating of the highest integrity, professionalism, and we have to really just with just dignity and grace to everyone in the supply chain. It's a stressful situation, and for us, just making sure that we're keeping everybody collaborating, happy, progressing towards a common goal. That's really, I think, what we've taken out of it is we have to do better. and we have to continue to manage the relationships, even with the advent of technology stacking on top of it and making our jobs easier.
Your space is so much a sort of a balance and a marriage of how can you get systems and tools and technology that's going to support the people that are operating in that system, right? So, of course, you want to continue to digitize processes and make sure that folks have all the information they need when they need it. They know where their trucks are. They know how they're being deployed. They know what's on them. We hear that a lot from our customers, that is key, right? Like, you need to know every single thing that's on every single truck and where they're located. But there's people driving those trucks that have families and lives, and you need to continue to manage those relationships. So it really is like a marriage, it feels like, between catching up to digitization while also supporting the humans that have really like built this practice. And literally, I'm not going to say driven because that's terrible, but terrible pun. But really driven it forward, right? Like, there is like a lot, and it definitely feels like this is not the only industry that has that marriage, right? You're seeing more and more of this as these more sort of physical, really tactical, like, industries and verticals are starting to digitize. There's still such a huge human component here.
Yeah, and what I've really come to appreciate is the technology is amazing. We obviously want to be efficient. We want to be as green as possible. From like a management level, we want to be as efficient as possible, producing the most amount of transactions we can per person per day. That's just healthy business. But really, I think where the technology still has a big question mark is, what do you do when things go wrong? You don't want to do an ask a chat, to a robot process automation that's going to try and tell you where your truck is. You want somebody on the phone, you want an answer, you want some empathy, you want a solution. And I love technology. It's changed our industry, but man, when something goes wrong, you don't want to use an automated service. You want a live person to fix this problem, tell you it's going to be okay, give you an answer, be honest, and fix it, And I think that's probably in logistics and transportation the biggest reason that you see this pendulum of manual human interaction and digitalization. I think this is why this pendulum's swinging back, because there are so many situations where it doesn't go right. And if your flight gets canceled and you booked your own flight, you're scrambling, you're manic, right? If you have that partner that's helping you get through this, getting you a new flight or getting you a new truck, I think that's that type of solution where it's okay to have somebody help you that's better at it than you are. And it's okay to want that human interaction when things don't go wrong and you're feeling that stress or that pressure or that anxiety.
It's a balance, right? And I think that is a really important conversation to continue to have as we start to get into, a world of hyper automation. And I think that is obviously super important to creating efficient businesses, but then also needs to be paired with a really effective human strategy of, like, how do we maintain relationships? When is it really important to have another person on the other end of the line? I really appreciate your perspective on this, Ron. I think it's really interesting as we continue to talk about technology and agility, that there is another side to this as well. That is a balance.
Yeah, thank you.
I would love to hear, we ask everyone this question, but how would you define agility in your business? And then maybe it's in your role as well as the business that you run.
Yeah, agility really for me, I think it just comes down to being adaptable and nimble. When you're dealing in a transportation sector, again, there's all kinds of things that are not going to go to plan. Machines will break down, drivers will fall ill, you'll miss appointments for your customer. We'll miss deadlines, we'll shut down production lines. There's all kinds of stress that comes with working in transportation and logistics. For me, I think agility is just the ability to keep emotions in check when things go wrong. For us, that's critical, not allowing your emotions to take over your better judgment, and keeping your customer kind of always at the forefront, right? So that idea of agility is, if we're not doing something that's supporting the greater good of our customer, then we're not doing it right. Just because we have these maybe like tribal types of processes and behaviors that have worked really well in the past, the ability to have to pivot for a new client or to adjust because something deviated from our original scope of work, I think for us, that's what we're really trying to accomplish. And in terms of a brand, like, transportation companies can be in the billions. They can be small individual one-person entities that are doing what I do. Having that ability to give a personalized experience to the client is really starting to come off as something that people want more of. They want that one-to-one attention. They don't want to be in a big call center. So for us, being agile is being able to be available to the customer when they need us to be, and being able to offer them a solution as quickly as possible when they present one to us. That agility comes with using the technology, having the right processes in place, training our people to be customer centric and customer facing, even when things are going tough, and then keeping all this energy bottled up in a healthy, constructive way. That for us is, I think, how we look at agility today. It's complex. It's a lot of emotion, a lot of just creativity and improvisation as you go. You know, you have to be ready to adjust. You have to be ready to pivot on a dime, and you have to also enjoy the chaos and the eclectic tempo. You just have to be willing and accepting of all the things that you can't control. And I think for us, that's kind of like a mantra we like to live by is, you know, just only focus on controlling what you can control. And if you're doing that, you'll be able to be nimble, you'll be agile, and you'll probably do really great work.
Definitely. You're making logistics sound like art, Ron. I love it. The creativity.
That's what they pay me to do. So thanks, Shannon.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. That's awesome. So, all right, our final question that we ask all our guests is, how are you doing? How has this year been for you in all of the needs to pivot and to sort of change your business and taking on this role for you? How has the last year been for you?
Yeah, I always seem to gravitate towards these really hyper growth environments. The last two companies I worked at before New Age were those types of opportunities where you're starting with something and it's maybe more of its infancy, and then we're trying to accelerate the growth and the brand and the scope of the breadth of services. And so for me, this year has been an amazing challenge. I'm taking on a new leadership role at a company that's been well established, but now it's poised to really just grow like crazy. And we're super excited about it. We have some great funding behind us. We have a really good team. And I think what I'm most excited about for me personally is the idea of helping cultivate a lot of new careers and just really get back to basics of having a lot of fun about scaling a startup size business and making it into something grandiose. So this is going to be my third tour of this type of a deal. I'm really excited about this one because I have a really good amount of autonomy and the ability to make the right decisions, pick the right team. So for me, this is going to be a really excellent year. I think collectively, everyone can agree that 2020 was just brutal. And I'm happy to say, at least for myself, that 2021 started off amazing. And I'm very optimistic about the future for me and for my team.
Awesome. We love to hear it. Well, Ron, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for talking to us today. And to all of you out there, make sure you like and subscribe. You can find us anywhere you listen to or watch your favorite podcast, as well as quickbase.com/podcast and our YouTube channel. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.